Pure functions are essentially for a variety of purposes, including functional programming, reliable concurrency, having predictable code, and are one of the quickest ways to make code easier to understand. But most importantly, in this video, we are going to discuss what are pure functions, why you need them, and how exactly are they created. My name is Hamza Ali, and you are watching Code with Hami. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe, like, and share this video. So, to understand what pure functions are, we need to understand what pure functions mean and why they are brought about. So, pure functions are brought about because of functional programming. The functional programming is mainly built on pure function. So, what is pure function? Pure function simply means a function that does not have any side effect, and the other point is a function that returns the same input given the same a function that returns a same output given the same input. It does not depend A pure function does not depend on any state or data change during a program's execution. Rather, it only depends on its input argument. So which means a pure function will not depend on anything other than the arguments that are passed to it. So enough with the theory, let's get our hands dirty and dive deep into the creating pure functions. First, let's take an example of non-pure function. That way we will be able to understand more about what pure functions are. So as you can see, I have already have VS Code open and I'm on the index.js file. I'll initialize an array containing, let's say, 5 elements. Now I'm going to create a function that will remove the last element of this array every time the function is called. So let's create that function, remove Now let's call the function remove element of array, and after calling the function we are going to console log the the array. Now if we go on to open the terminal and run our file by typing a command node index.js. So as you can see, it removed the last element of an array. What are the 2 points that we discussed about the pure function? That are, it does not have any side effects, which mean it will not alter or access anything outside of its scope. But right now this remove element of array is updating the array variable here. So it breaks the first rule of a pure function. Now let's look at the second rule, which was given the same input, it should always return the same output. So we are going to call, now let's call the function 2 times. First let's add first time, and then we are going to call it, we are going to print console log the array every time, after every time we call the function. So if we run the file again, you can see we don't get consistent output. So which means this function remove element of array is not a pure function. It breaks all the rules of a pure function. So now let's create a function or write a function that satisfies the rules of a pure function. We are going to create a simple function that is going to take 2 numbers as an argument and return the sum of those 2 numbers. Now let's add 2 numbers. A and B, return A plus B. Now if we console log the result of add two numbers and give it an input of 1 2, so you can see we got 3. If we this add two numbers satisfies both of the condition of pure function. It does not it does not have any side effects, and it will return the same output every time we give it the same input. So now let's call this function again. You can see we got 3 again. We got 3 as a result. So which means we are getting the same output every time we give this function a same input. This makes these two condition makes this add two numbers a pure function. So now just to give a more clear view of what pure function is, if let's say for some reason we console log something here, so console log, this console log will remove, or this add to function is now no longer a pure function because of this console log. Why? Because console log is a global variable, global object, and we are calling the function log of a console object. That's why it creates side effect, and that's why this add to number is no longer a pure function. Now if we remove this console log, now we have the add to number is a pure function. So yeah, what are the advantages of a pure function? First one is code predictability. We get predictable code. We know what this function is going to return every time we call this. So now, what do I mean by that? If let's say if we call this function with an example, let's say 200 plus 120, we know that every time we give this input to add to number 200 and 120 input to the pass the to add two numbers, we are going to get the result of 320 every single time we call this function. So this makes this add to number a predictable block of code. Now the second point is you don't have to worry about changing anything outside of a scope of the pure function while executing it. So now, which means that the add to function is independent of anything outside of its scope. It's not going to access or change or do anything with things that are outside of its scope. Now what are the disadvantages of a pure function? The disadvantages is that you cannot access anything outside of its scope of function, which is also its advantage. So how does this, like, how is not accessing anything outside of scope of function makes is a disadvantage? So let's say if we want to call a DB, make a DB request, or we want to call an API, so we have to, like, we cannot do that inside a pure function. We have to convert the pure function to a non-pure impure function, or we have to write another function to call that function, make our API request. So yeah, that's what pure function is. I hope after watching this video you have pretty good understanding of pure function. That's it from this video. See you in the next one.